Back in August, I shed some light on the less than ideal state of the animation industry, wanting to highlight some of the chaos people are being put through, because it's harder for the bigwigs at the top to get away with the BS when more people are aware of what's going on. So, animation industry, it's been a few months since I've checked in on ya. How we feeling? They say it's going to get worse before it gets better. Unless you work for a mega corporation, then it just gets worse before someone files for bankruptcy and you're out of a job. Although it looks like Hollywood is on the up and up with the actors and writers no longer on strike, as the top dogs finally came to the conclusion, you know what, maybe the people making us money do deserve to live. Animation is still struggling, as right now is the most vulnerable time to work in the industry. I said in the last video that if something doesn't change soon, animation production in the US may never recover. Sadly, it feels like moves are already being made to ensure that happens ahead of next year's animation strike, which is looking more and more likely to happen. And so, the fight for animation has begun. Everyone's taking note of the SAG and WGA strikes, and if you ask me, I think a lot of the powers that be are scared, because they know those working in animation will be empowered by the actors and writers. It feels like things are being set up so that there's little chance artists will be able to reap whatever next year's strike sows. Now that companies are wasting no time canceling shows and punishing productions in order to recoup losses and, in my opinion, spite the strikers, we already know which medium is gonna get a beating: animation. Like last time, this Zeet really sums it all up. To recap again, Dreamworks and other studios are laying off in-house artists in favor of cheaper international labor. Netflix Animation canned more animated projects and is doing even more layoffs. The Animation Guild contract ends summer 2024. Although the Dreamworks and Netflix news is already pretty outrageous at face value, I need to unpack just how insane all of this truly is. And trust me, these are just scratching the surface. So here's some more heartbreaking shenanigans that's happened in the animation industry since my last video in the summer. In 2020, Avatar took over the internet after being added to Netflix. In 2021, Paramount announced Avatar Studios, a production company dedicated to expanding the Avatar universe with not only new shows, but theatrical films as well, with their first movie set to enter production that year. 2023, oh god, what happened? At the end of September 2023, Avatar Studios suffered mass layoffs on a production, an animated feature in particular, with numerous employees posting that they suddenly found themselves out of work. Now, we can pretend like we don't know which project this was, but considering out of the 3 movies they announced, we knew the Aang movie was the only one in production, and it was just confirmed last year. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that it was that one. These layoffs may have been a result of Paramount losing money from the strike, something these studios did to themselves. As the same week these layoffs happened, news broke that they also canceled their most popular original over on Paramount Plus, the adult iCarly revival, ending it on an unceremonious cliffhanger, teasing the return of Carly's mom. We're never gonna know what that woman looks like. Now rest be assured, it seems like the movie's not canceled, they just put it on hold. But I think the situation perfectly encapsulates what's wrong with the state of animation. The people in charge aren't creatives with a clear vision. They're indecisive businessmen who treat the industry like it's another night out at the casino. They saw Avatar had a big resurgence in 2020, declared to the world that they were going to go all in on the franchise, then kept us invested by revealing an Aang movie, only to put it on hold a year later when we weren't looking. And I'm sure this is not a big deal to the people making these decisions because it'll come out eventually, but those are the few who still get to keep their job, while dozens, if not more, suddenly have to find a new gig to put food on the table, during a time where practically nothing is getting greenlit in animation. I do hope the movie picks up production again soon, especially since the Netflix series is probably gonna have a One Piece effect, where people who haven't watched the original get invested, seeking out the source material, and then find themselves frothing at the mouth for more. I'd love to see the movie finally make it across the finish line at a point where Avatar is having another huge resurgence. So Paramount, don't fumble! Animation, like all art, is something that's made all over the world. However, it's undeniable that, for better or worse, a lot of popular animated entertainment comes from the United States. Over time, California has become the hub of animation in the West, with the majority of studios only offering work there as opposed to other states in the country. To put things into perspective, if you're an artist employed at an animation studio, odds are you're in the Animation Guild, aka their union. Why is this important? Well, to quote from the Guild's website directly, "We advocate for our members to improve wages, improve working conditions, and provide pension and health benefits through the Motion Picture Industry Health and Pension Plan. We use our strength in numbers to provide favorable outcomes in collective bargaining. We protect workers' rights and make sure employers follow the terms of the collective bargaining agreements. When issues with employers arise, we represent the interests of our members." Basically, if you work in animation and are interested in things like, I don't know, healthcare and appropriate compensation for your talents, then yeah, you're gonna want to join the union. Well, joining it isn't really a choice since, to once again quote the Animation Guild website, your employer has a collective bargaining agreement with the Animation Guild that requires employees working under the Guild's jurisdiction to join the Guild after 30 days employment. According to both the Guild's website and this article over at Cartoon Brew, they have over 6,000 animation workers, and most of them are based in Los Angeles as of December 2021. Keep that in mind. Most union work is in LA, thus most people who work animation or want to break into it live there as well. Don't get it twisted, there are still other animation studios in the country like Powerhouse and Titmouse's New York branch. But for the most part, if you want to work in Western animation, you're more than likely gonna have to live in California. Pretty much my entire friend group out here only moved here for their careers in the industry. Of course there are exceptions, and of course the advent of remote work has given people opportunities that they wouldn't have had before. But number one, 2020 was basically 4 years ago. Remote work isn't as common as it once was for animation, as quite a few studios have been pivoting back to in-person work. And number two, working in animation yet living outside of California just isn't gonna be the same experience. You're missing out on community and networking, which can make getting another gig after your current one much harder. People want to hire talent that they know can get the job done. So like any other job field, getting to know people and making friends, showing that you're a good team player, will absolutely go a long way in securing future gigs. But all of that may not even matter soon, because at the rate the animation industry is going, companies may be phasing out work in the United States entirely, outsourcing all of the work to international studios instead. And they're doing this for the sole objective of saving money, no matter who it screws over. But hey, don't take my word for it. Take the word of the 70 employees who got laid off at Dreamworks in the beginning of October. Reported by Variety on the 8th of that month. Dreamworks Animation reduced its workforce by approximately 70 positions. Roles affected were across corporate functions, feature, television, and technology departments as part of an overall cost reduction, a spokesperson for Dreamworks told Variety. Variety's article also cites another Cartoon Brew article, which delves into Dreamworks' partnership with Sony Imageworks, which is based in Canada. As part of cost-cutting measures, Dreamworks Animation is shifting away from producing films fully in-house at its Glendale, California studio, and will rely more heavily on third-party studios. Cartoon Brew understands that morale is low at the studio, for good reason too. Dreamworks, along with Walt Disney Animation Studios, stood as the last of the major feature animation studios in Los Angeles that still did a production for some, not all, of its films entirely in-house. But that will all change in 2025, according to Lake's presentation to workers. None of the studio's 3 films currently slated for 2025 will be made fully in-house. One of those 3 films will be made using the studio's new mixed production model in collaboration with Sony Pictures Imageworks. Dreamworks' 2 other films in 2025 will be animated entirely at partner studios, which are not Imageworks. Now, to an outsider who doesn't really keep up with the affairs of the entertainment industry, what's so bad about this? After all, Imageworks is responsible for bringing the Spider-Verse and Hotel Transylvania films to life. Those are beautiful movies that show us why 3D animation can be just as visually impressive as 2D. But 2D's always gonna have my heart, sorry about it. Studios collaborating with one another isn't the issue with outsourcing. The issue is that this was done for the sole purpose of saving money by evidently screwing over 70 people with bills to pay and families to feed. And Dreamworks probably gets a chance to capitalize on screwing over people even further by throwing, in collaboration with the studio that brought you Spider-Verse, in a trailer, healthcare plans, eviction notices,
divorce paper.
What are you talking about? We hired the people who make Miles move. Look at him go. Give us money because we think you're dumb and are immediately going to associate two good-ass movies with whatever this is without actually seeing it. Now, it is worth noting that Dreamworks has union and non-union employees, but so does almost every studio, because production jobs are usually excluded from the union. Although WBA and the Corps of Cartoon Network recently recognized the unionization of their production workers, so things are slowly getting better. And by better, I mean at a place they already should have been at. That being said, the artists and animators at Dreamworks are unionized under the Animation Guild. Meanwhile, Sony Pictures Imageworks as a whole is non-union, despite its corporate affiliation with Sony Pictures Animation. It's a vendor studio Sony made for their animated films, as a way to duck paying animators union wages, since it's outside of the US. Now, other animation studios specializing in feature are getting in on it. And of course, why would Sony mind? That's more work, and thus more cash money, baby! Need I reiterate, the people running these companies are businessmen, not passionate creative people with an artistic vision. All they see are dollar signs, like that one gag in Gravity Falls. And I actually think this is a move that's taken from TV. Pretty much all the cartoons we grew up with has followed a pipeline of producing the storyboards, model sheets, props, color design, editing, and a bunch of other fun stuff in-house at their respective studio, and then outsourcing the actual animation to a vendor studio. And from my understanding, some shows are made at vendor studios entirely, like KIF. And often these vendor studios are located outside of the US, which means they get to duck union wages. Check the credits next time you're watching an animated series and pick the vendor studio who handled the episode. You'll probably see names like Rough Draft, Sunman, or Mercury Filmworks, just to name some off the top of my head. And when the animation's all finished up, it's sent back to the studio. They'll usually need some retakes, but the post-production process will continue in-house from there. These shows could be made completely in-house if the people calling the shots want it to. A lot of artists practically animate their storyboards already, and there's so many artists looking for work that I doubt studios would be in short supply of animators anytime soon. The reality is that the people calling the shots don't want to, because they want to spend as little money as possible. And if Cartoon Network is any example, TV is only going to outsource more and more of the process. Cartoon Network barely has anything in production already, but 3 of the shows they do have in the works are being produced internationally at Hanna-Barbera Europe. Gumball Season 7, which was already being made there, so business as usual, the Powerpuff Girls reboot, and the Foster's Home reboot. I believe Gumball is made almost entirely at that studio from storyboards to final animation, but the other 2 I'm not so sure. However, with Craig McCracken heavily involved with these 2 reboots, I suspect that they're following a similar work ethic to Genndy Tartakovsky. If you look at any episode of his last 2 shows, Primal and Unicorn Wars Eternal, you'll notice that the man does almost everything. He's the director, writer, and storyboarder of almost every episode, with one other person usually helping him write and storyboard. And then of course, the animation is outsourced internationally. Now, I love this with Primal because it practically gives us Genndy's unadulterated vision, and I appreciate that Cartoon Network and Adult Swim gives them time to cook with these shows instead of trying to churn out a new season every year. However, it's undeniable that when your in-house staff is an extremely small team that tackles multiple jobs that in any other production would go to different people, you're going to be saving a fuck ton of money. And it's because of this, and the success of Primal in particular, that I think the higher-ups thought to themselves, who's another well-known creator that's made a buttload of money for us, has decades of experience, and would be more than happy to get work. And obviously, Craig was the obvious choice. I wish they'd let him do something new, but hey, at least he'll set the record straight on what a modern Powerpuff Girls show should be. It should go without saying that none of this means Craig or Genndy are in the wrong for having the chance to create art that means something to them. But I'm still gonna make that clear just in case, because I don't want people to put words in my mouth, and they're the goats. I have a lot of respect for them. The problem with this, assuming that my theory is true, is that this is screwing dozens of artists and potential writers out of a job. We're watching entire teams getting phased out of in-house so that the rich can get richer.
Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh.
This shouldn't become common practice, and I believe we need to call it out now before it does. Because what do you think that means for the thousands of artists who live in LA? A lot of them moving across the country or even out of the country to work here. If this is the future of the industry, then jobs are going to dry up, forcing those who once dreamed of making it this far to either find a new occupation or move to a different country to stay in the game. And hey, maybe that means nothing to some of you. You don't care. Animation is just entertainment to you. I got it. But this is affecting an entire job market I care about, and it's affecting friends that I love. So to me, it's a problem worth speaking about. And I'd argue that a lot of the humor and charm of the shows you love that came from America wouldn't have been the same if they weren't produced here, simply because the teams that made them special wouldn't have come together. Shows and movies aren't just something to pacify your children or yourself for 11 to 20 minutes. I mean, yeah, we've gotten corporate soulless shit before, and we'll continue to get it in the future. But think of the golden years of shows like SpongeBob, Regular Show, The Simpsons, Phineas and Ferb, and so on. Think of your favorite show, think of the characters, gags, and stories that you love. Those were all informed by the team making those shows, pouring their own quirks, sense of humor, and life experiences into those shows. And while good art can be made anywhere, the idea that all of these artists who were told to live here to follow their dreams may be unable to contribute to future stories at the benefit of people who don't give a fuck about those stories at all really rubs me the wrong way. I believe there's a story in all of us, but I also believe that when you become so blinded by money, none of those stories matter as much as the bottom dollar. Hell, Bob Iger recently said as much himself. Hey buddy, you're kind of a dick. I'm gonna try to keep this section brief because AI is a conversation that deserves its own video. So to get down to brass tacks, the advent of AI is terrifying to a lot of people in just about every field of work because it's obvious that if robots are capable of replacing human workers, then companies will invest in making that happen because at the end of the day, things like installation and maintenance cost will be significantly cheaper than keeping real people on payroll. And if there's anyone itching to implement AI in order to save money, it's of course the entertainment industry. It's a big reason why actors are mixed on the new SAG-AFTRA contract. Despite some of their anxieties with artificial intelligence being put at ease, there's still a lot of vague language revolving around generative AI and synthetic performers. With that said, it's no surprise that the animation industry is also worried about talent being replaced with AI, and with good reason. We already know animation is the least respected facet of entertainment due to the perception that it's inherently more childish than live action. So the average Joe is going to be less inclined to care about the medium losing its human touch. Not to mention the fact that AI is typically trained on literally billions of images without people's consent. Okay, well it's still screwed up. People steal art from websites and post it to Instagram and Facebook all the time. So yes, people's art can still be used to train AI without their consent. Combined with the rise of AI art and things like the nightmarish amalgamation of Snapchat filters the corridor crew is trying to pass off as anime, you could see why artists are concerned that they're being pushed out the door. It's clear that AI isn't going anywhere, and what bothers me about that more than anything is that these tools aren't being developed to aid artists. These tools only exist to replace them. But then these studios act surprised when people push back on AI. No shit, people are gonna push back, but maybe these are just fears and nothing more. I'm jumping the gun and stirring up panic for something that's not even set in stone. I mean, it's not like the co-founder of a major animation studio that I just talked about said that AI will reduce the cost of their animated films by a significant number, specifically due to the removal of human artists, right? And he especially didn't say it on camera. Right?
Well, the good old days when, you know, I made an animated movie. It took 500 artists 5 years to make a world-class animated movie. I think it won't take 10% of that. Literally, I don't think it will take 10% of that 3 years out from now.
Oh, God damn it! Let me reiterate one last time. These are businessmen with an agenda to make money, and if the livelihoods of artists stand in the way of that bottom dollar, then they're just going to get rid of the artist, so long as they believe that they can get away with it. But they forgot about one thing. Nerds like me will be on their ass like white on rice, informing the masses of all their tomfoolery with my, Jerry Sagery? Yeah, that works. That goes kind of hard. My Jerry Sagery. But make no mistake, these big shots aren't just selfish, they're also hypocrites. They love AI until it makes their brand look bad. And if you need an example, look no further than Disney. AI-generated images have taken the internet by storm this year, and over the fall, we saw some shenanigans that really got under the mouse's skin. Thanks to Microsoft Bing's image creator, powered by DALL-E 3, mountains of fake Pixar posters were flying around the internet. And these weren't fun little posters for things like Toy Story 7 or Cars vs. Monsters, no. They were purposely offensive posters for flicks like One Jar, Stuffed, and the straw that probably broke the camel's back cost. Lord Almighty. Now, to the average internet user, a bulk of these are either going to be really funny or really annoying. But for Disney, you basically just violated the Geneva Convention. According to the Financial Times, one person familiar with Disney's approach suggested the media giant had reported its concerns about copyright or intellectual property infringement, although Disney declined to comment. Basically, they were big mad, and they were ready to lawyer up. Since then, the term Disney was initially blocked from the image generator, but now it's unblocked. The Disney logo just tends to get screwed up a bit in these images, since, according to Andrew White, partner at IP law firm Mathis & Squire, reproduction of the Disney logo is clear trademark infringement. I would imagine that is why the AI might be jumbling the logo. From a PR perspective, it is a fine line for Disney, seeming to come down on something for fun that is ultimately raising its profile versus something that is actually anti-competitive. If Disney took legal action, they would just look like butthurt clowns. Because nobody's actually making these movies. And if you have at least a single functioning brain cell, you'd be able to recognize that these posters are fake. The worst case scenario for Disney is that people will look at these and go, yeah, I actually kind of want to watch a Disney movie now. Which we know is something people ain't saying all too often nowadays. But just because Disney is big mad about the fake posters doesn't mean they're suddenly against AI, as they celebrated Thanksgiving by remaking an old painting with seemingly the help of AI. Yeah, the utensils give it away. It's okay when Disney does it. Aside from how horrifying the new painting looks, because all I see are people trapped in theme park costumes like it's FNAF, it is truly troubling that they likely didn't go through the effort of hiring an actual artist to remake a poster from start to finish. Like, come on, you're already using an idea. At least bring in an artist who could spice it up and give it an exciting twist, rather than this soulless image that makes me kinda itchy the more I look at it. Ew. AI bad, learn to draw, let's move on. In March of 2018, Netflix founded a subsidiary titled Netflix Animation, an animation studio dedicated to, you guessed it, not making animation. You see, in the early days of Netflix originals, their animated projects were made by third-party studios. BoJack, Voltron, Castlevania, and so on. None of them were actually made by Netflix. But with the streaming wars heating up and money needing to be made, Netflix decided to get more involved and start making cartoons in-house. And they recruited big-name talent to make it happen, promising them the creative freedom they were denied at other studios. So let's check in 5 years later. Netflix Animation, how we doing? What the fuck? October 11th, 2023. Matt Donnelly of Variety reports on the tragic state of Netflix Animation, stating Netflix's animation unit and the film state it controls will undergo a restructure, resulting in job cuts and the shutdown of 2 films currently in pre-production. As a result of the reorganization, the streamer is looking to recruit outside deals to keep its animated content volume consistent. 2 slate projects have been put in turnaround, the first being a previously unannounced film titled Escape from Beverly Hills, which will now go back on the open market. The second film is Tunga, a film won by Netflix at an auction in 2019 from Zimbabwe-born creator Godwin Jabangwi. That film is rooted in the mythology of the Shona culture and has been sent back into development. Wow, that sounds sick. And I can't believe there's a chance we're never going to see it. Especially after Netflix won it at an auction 4 years ago. You mean there's another distributor who wouldn't have fumbled this? Oops. So let me get this straight. Netflix's animated original started out with them bringing in other studios to make shows and movies for them. A few years in, they realized there may be a financial incentive in producing those projects directly. Then, a few years after that, they discovered something everyone already knew, which is that animation is expensive. But they just shrugged their shoulders, kill some projects, or reset them entirely, and go back to square one of having other studios make shows for them. While I'm glad we were able to see projects like City of Ghost, Maya and the Three, and Inside Job come to fruition, it's still hard for me to see this as anything other than disrespectful to the artists they brought in to make the magic happen. And this is what I mean when I say the industry is ran by a bunch of businessmen treating it like a casino. It really seems like they thought they had a surefire way to save money, make money. But when that didn't pan out, who were the people that paid the price? Well, the creatives and the consumers. And while the consumers are already tired of it, the creatives are starting to speak up as well. Man, I really hope the world gets to see Tunga and the project I worked on there. Animation has really felt like the industry's punching bag this year. But while the people actually working in animation have to deal with the consequences, Netflix will just act like everything is hunky-dory because they can rely on the success of projects that did get finished and are slowly trickling out. Despite grappling with internal strategy and larger external market factors, Netflix Animation had its biggest year in 2023. The division took home the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature for Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio after a long awards run. I point this out to say, just because a company seems like they're doing fine on the outside, it doesn't mean they're actually doing all that great. Everybody asks, where's Netflix? But no one ever asks, how's Netflix? Because we all know the answer is shit. A lot of entertainment giants get away with sweeping terrible news and horrible practices under the rug by releasing whatever shiny new thing they have that month. They don't think stockholders or consumers have object permanence. So when loudmouths like me come along making videos like this, it can come across as fear-mongering because if things are so bad, why are they releasing things that they already started working on years ago? It's been happening with my on and off coverage of Cartoon Network Studios. Since last year, I was talking about how it would be reduced to nothing but a brand, as they were losing their studio and the unique culture that it fostered. But because they tweeted they weren't dead and dropped stuff like Fiona and Cake, I got comments saying I didn't know what I was talking about. And all the old Cartoon Network buildings look like this, and they barely have anything in production. Think critically, look beyond a surface level, and question why entertainment companies, who all have investors, would want to make behind-the-scenes affairs look better than they really are. And speaking of Cartoon Network, in the 2000s, and I'd say most of the 2010s, Cartoon Network wasn't perceived as just a kids channel. A lot of its programming was accessible to all ages, whether that be their own series, the anime they picked up for Toonami, or the cartoons they imported from international. It was hard to find a show on the channel that didn't appeal to kids, teens, and adults. I do think the mid-2010s is when a lot of longtime viewers started to age out of the network because, frankly, a lot of their shows started to feel watered down. Cartoon Network had an edge to it that slowly started getting stripped away, and any shows that still managed to embrace that edge were swept under the rug and quickly canceled. That, and I think a lot of people started judging books by their covers, me included. This channel might have blown up for me talking about Steven Universe, but those early ads and the shift in art style from the pilot didn't do it any favors. It wasn't until 2015 that I really warmed up to the show and began tuning in consistently. And you have shows like Uncle Grandpa that was an absolute punching bag in the mid-2010s, but is now beloved by many online after fans spoke up and made it clear that they actually liked it. Still, there's no denying that Cartoon Network has felt more and more kiddie over the past few years, which might be by design. In the age of the iPad, baby, kids' content is more lucrative than ever online. But clearly someone at Cartoon Network thought that cable had a fighting chance, and in the fall of 2021, they brought their international preschool block to the United States, Cartoon Nito. And it took up way too much of the schedule. While it consisted of third-party shows they didn't actually own and whatever the hell Bat Wheels is, Cartoon Network was ready to go all in on preschool content, claiming that their preschool slate would reach 50 originals by 2023. Well, here we are at the end of 2023. They only made 4, and now they're already moving on. In fact, the only preschool show Cartoon Network Studios made directly, the Craig the Creek spinoff Jessica's Big Little World, has already been axed after 1 season. According to Craig the Creek's editor, Mark T. Collins, there won't be any more Jessica episodes after the 20 that have been made. The new regime doesn't want to do preschool shows. You guys already know the pattern. Once again, it feels like they just wasted everyone's time. Now, I'm sure the people who actually got to work on these shows were grateful for the experience, but that doesn't diminish the fact that they were brought in to make something only to be told, we don't want this anymore. They literally just launched Cartoon Nito. Last time I pitched at CN, I was told they're currently only looking for preschool content. You've gotta be kidding me.
We still haven't really been able to crack the kids. We have a huge amount of kids content when they haven't been able to crack that. We're going to attack that as well.
It's clear the people in charge of Cartoon Network, or what's left of it, have no idea what direction to take it in. However, it does seem like they're slowly catching on to young adult animation being the future after the success of Fiona and Cake, which usually a new season announcement means they've been working on that season for quite some time, but this time it really looks like they announced it shortly after the green light. You even got people who worked on the first season asking to be brought back. And as I talked about before, 68 of Cartoon Network's viewers are over the age of 18 as of 2023. I understand there's still value in making kids content, but if over half of your viewers are adults, maybe you should consider making more content geared towards them as well. I noticed over the year their social media presence is starting to pander more and more to nostalgia and adult animation. It's obvious that they're pivoting back into a more mature direction, and if you ask me, it's the appropriate course of action. Then again, I'm a dude in his mid-20s who still watches cartoons, so obviously I want more animation that caters to people my age. But it's not like I didn't watch adult animation as a kid, and again, something that appeals to everyone just seems to be what the network has always excelled at. I hope Cartoon Network can find their way back to the top sooner rather than later. But as long as Zaslav is in charge of Warner Discovery as a whole, it feels a lot like wishful thinking. Especially when this is a company that can't even release a movie that's already finished! When I started writing this video, this story actually had a relatively happy ending. But then Warner f***ed it up again. Coyote vs. Acme is a live-action CG animated hybrid film, a la the recent Tom and Jerry movie and... yeah, that. Starring Will Forte, John Cena, Wile E. Coyote, and Roadrunner. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the infamously hapless canine Wile E. Coyote takes center stage in the story, which sees him sue the Acme Corporation for the not quite in working order devices he has received from them over the years in his quest to best his nemesis and potential meal, the Roadrunner, as seen in the classic cartoons. Forte plays a down-on-his-luck human attorney who takes on Wile E. as a client in his suit, only to discover that his boss at his former law firm, played by John Cena, is representing Acme. This sounds fun! A new Looney Tunes movie that takes a risk by focusing on a duo who isn't Bugs and Daffy? And a creative premise that challenges the entire status quo of these cartoons? Featuring 2 of Hollywood's silly little guys? And it's reminiscent of one of my guilty pleasure movies, Looney Tunes Back in Action? I needed this movie in my life yesterday! Damn it all to hell! Only a month after it was announced, Coyote vs. Acme was pulled from Warner Bros. Release schedule on April 26, 2022. I guess it didn't have enough Kenergy to compete with Barbie, as that replaced its original release date. Somewhere out there, a Looney Tunes guy had to explain to his girlfriend that that's why he wasn't excited to see the movie. And hey, Barbie made them over $1 billion, so I doubt they have much remorse about that. Despite the removal from release schedule, you can tell that the cast and crew remained optimistic that Coyote vs. Acme would eventually see the light of day. For example, take John Cena's cryptic-ass Instagram that I adore, presented without context or caption. It felt like every few days he would post a Looney Tunes screen cap to silently remind his fans and Warner that the film was still coming. But after a certain point, these screen caps started to get ominous, depressing. Even some of his non-Looney Tunes posts started to raise some concern. Like this photo of Babe Ruth retiring, that he posted on November 8th, 2023? Or what he posted on the next day on November 9th, 2023? What is, at the time of making this video, his last Looney Tunes adjacent post? He hasn't posted anything reminiscent of Looney Tunes since. The post is a vintage end card, similar to something we see at the end of every Looney Tunes short. That's all, folks. And that's because on November 9th, it was announced that Coyote vs. Acme was shelved by Warner Bros. Despite it being completely finished, as the studio planned on taking a $30 million tax write-off instead of releasing the film. In another maneuver by the David Zaslav-run Warner Bros. Discovery to kill movies, we hear on very good authority that Warner Bros. Will not be releasing the hybrid live-action animated Coyote vs. Acme, with the conglomerate taking an estimated $30 million write-down on the $70 million production. This reps the third time that Zaslav's Warner Bros. Has pulled the plug on a movie greenlighted by the previous Warner Media administration, the other two being the Max Destin Batgirl and the animated Scooby Holiday Haunt. Take note of that. These were films greenlit when someone else was in charge. Almost as if ego was a factor. Couldn't imagine why. The difference here is that Coyote vs. Acme is a completed movie with very good test scores, 14 points above the family norm. We're told that the cast-strapped Warners find that it's not worth the cost to release the film theatrically or to sell to other buyers, and there are parties who are interested for their own streaming services. We hear Amazon kick the tires. After reporting a mixed third quarter, the best means for Warner's money is a tax write-off. The crew was devastated, with the director Dave Green making the following statement. For 3 years, I was lucky enough to make a movie about Wile E. Coyote, the most persistent, passionate, and resilient character of all time. I was surrounded by a brilliant team who poured their souls into this project for years. We were all determined to honor the legacies of these historic characters and actually get them right. Along the ride, we were embraced by test audiences who rewarded us with fantastic scores. I am beyond proud of the final product and beyond devastated by Warner Brothers' decision. But in the spirit of Wile E. Coyote, resilience and persistence win the day. I think the fact that this happened the same year as the strikes really drove home that, contrary to what they claim, the higher-ups have very little respect for the craft and the people behind these projects. They made it apparent that no matter how far they get, anyone's movie can be taken away at a moment's notice, and they'll do it without any regret. In fact, Zaslav claimed at this year's Dillbook Summit that scrapping these films took courage. What content is going to help us win? The content that wasn't, we made a strategic decision on. It was difficult and it was painful, but it was the right decision for the company and it was necessary. Dude, Davey, come here. Closer, friend. You're a goddamn idiot. But hey, don't take my word for it. Just let the consequences speak for themselves. Reportedly, filmmakers began canceling meetings with Warner Discovery after the news of Coyote vs. Acme's fate. It became too apparent to too many people that this studio was in pretty bad shape. It's not the place to have your movie made. The public backlash was too large for Warner to ignore. So despite initially refusing to let the movie be shopped around, Warner Discovery finally folded on one of these projects and allowed Coyote vs. Acme to be shopped around, giving it a chance to see the light of day. This should be a happy ending, right? Film's gonna get released, and Warner's gonna catch a bag. And we see what can happen when people come together to speak out against corporate greed. I can't wait to see where this movie ends up, is what I would say if they weren't turning down deals. Netflix expressed interest in acquiring Coyote vs. Acme, but offered less than half of the $70 million budget cost. Talks ended there, and it's unknown if Warner Bros. Is speaking to any other potential buyers. My corporation in Christ, you wouldn't even have gotten half of the budget from a tax write-off. Now you want to see the value in your movies? I don't even know what to say, dude. This just sums up everything wrong with this company under the David Zaslav era. Everything feels like a game. It's hot, then it's cold. They want something, then they don't. But oh, people want it? Well, actually, it's worth so much. Warner Discovery, newsflash, buddy. You're not hot shit anymore. You're losing talent? Your big streaming service has already fallen from grace. The Warner Brothers and the Warner sister Dot already moved out of the water tower ages ago. You're washed. So please, kick David Zaslav's ass to the curb and get your shit together. Because at this rate, nobody's gonna wanna work for you. And Coyote versus Acme, I hope you get to see the light of day soon. But I'm not counting on it. So with every depressing thing we went over today, where do we go from here? What can we do as people on the other side, the people who love animation and want to fight against this grim future? Well, I believe we need to support the impending strike and support indie animation. Now, for anyone in the industry watching, I already know the notion of indie being a fix-all is, delusional, but just hear me out. The Animation Guild's current agreement with studios ends in the summer, and they cannot go on strike until the agreement is up. So when the time for a strike finally arrives, all you need to do as a viewer is give them the same support you gave SAG and the WGA. I firmly believe that raising basic awareness helped the actors and writers massively in gaining the upper hand against studios. There's truly strength in numbers, and social media has enabled us to speak out against these injustices in a way that just wasn't possible before. Animation, not being as respected as live action, has an uphill battle when it comes to maintaining the level of exposure the writers and actors strikes had. So please, get ready to be vocal and don't let up. Discussing Film, a major news outlet on Twitter, has promised to give the animation industry just as much support as they did for the other strikes, so that already will be a huge help. For everyone in the Animation Guild, I wish you the best of luck with the strikes, and I'm ready to aid y'all in any way possible. This definitely won't be the last video like this. But now let's talk about indie animation. Yes, it's true that a lot of animation fans naively claim that indie animation is the future without recognizing that not only is it hard as hell to produce, but in its current state, the wages and working conditions of even the best projects are only on par with mainstream animation. Companies have millions upon millions of dollars to fund studios and projects, while indie studios are the ones solely responsible for securing their funds. This is the biggest hurdle, because with the state we're in right now, ad revenue, Patreon, and merch can only do so much, especially if you're not someone like Vivzy or Tracy Butler, who have cultivated their followings over the course of at least a decade. In Tracy's case, 15 years. Helluva Boss, Lackadaisy, Murder Drones, and the New Kid on the Block, the amazing Digital Circus, have the benefit of raking in an unfathomable amount of views pretty much from the get-go. It's that kind of lightning in the bottle that other creatives aren't guaranteed, especially in an age where social media is ruled by algorithms. But the thing is, that's how things are right now. While every viewer may not have the greatest grip on the ins and outs of animation production, I definitely think those who say indie is the future are onto something. Look at how much this scene has expanded over the past few years. Aside from the big names, we have titles like Sublo and Tiggy Mustard, Monkey Wrench, Hullabaloo, and Ollie and Scoops, alongside upcoming titles like Far-Fetched, Screen Time, Hey, LS Mark's Pilot, Bro Mark, what the fuck is this called? And Extra Press? Whoa, what's that? Totally not my cartoon, whoa! The more projects that come out, the more the indie animation community will grow and have more eyes on it, and I can truly see everyone's work uplifting each other from that, feeding into each other, with viewers having a nice little Saturday morning cartoon session with all of these banger shows. And as the scene grows, the money will come. Yes, ad revenue and Patreon can only bring in so much, but do you think Viv would be constantly plugging Helluva Boss merch if it wasn't translating to money that keeps the studio afloat? And aside from that, there are plenty of other sources of income creators can turn to. Again, merch, but also sponsors. I assume a lot of these indie shows don't have ad reads attached by choice. They don't want to bombard their viewers with even more ads, but let's keep it a buck. With the views these web series are getting, I have no doubts they could secure a massive bag by throwing a sponsor onto the end of an episode, with that money going towards future episodes or projects. And honestly, if it's a character reading it, or just generally entertaining to watch, I don't think people will mind. There's ways to make this sustainable, but maybe saying all that brings to light a harsh reality. If you want to succeed in this space, you can't just be a creative. You're gonna have to be a leader and a businessman. Independent animation means being free from corporate greed, but it doesn't mean that there's no business strategy involved whatsoever. And I know that may sound weird considering how much I've hammered in that the people at the top tend to be greedy businessmen with no creative vision. But let me make it clear, being business savvy doesn't put you on the same level as a Zaslav or Iger. Best way to look at it? Major studios are like Starbucks, and indie studios are the small coffee shops. Even if you could brew the meanest cup of coffee, you're gonna need to know the ins and outs of running a business to actually get off the ground. It's not a matter of becoming a corrupt CEO just to make your cartoon. It's a matter of knowing how to speak in their language. I think the balancing act is just finding a way to be a good entrepreneur and a good boss, not sacrificing your morals for your dream. But obviously, that is all much easier said than done. It's a complicated process that's still being figured out. But why I really believe in any animation is because of the simple notion that competition breeds innovation. When it comes to viewership, Hell of a Boss and Digital Circus flat out embarrassed a majority of the projects that studios put out this year. Studios are gonna notice that way more eyes are on original projects that are a breath of fresh air and receive proper promotion because the creators are their own marketing team. It's these creator-driven projects that are gonna give power back to the creators at studios because there's going to be plenty of examples that show artists, consumers, and executives that the suits aren't needed to get shit made. The idea that indie can never surpass studios is frankly something CEOs want us to believe in. They want us to be defeatist, and we can't let them have that. I've been planning to talk about indie animation in its own dedicated video, so I'll quit yapping there. But for now, I want to know what you guys think about all this. Let us know in the comments down below, and give me a follow on Instagram and Twitter at AwestruckVox. Shout out to my boy Hats Off Media for another bigger thumbnail. Go watch his videos and give him some revenue so he can make screen time. And if you enjoyed this video, please throw it a like, subscribe. Whatever you want really, it's your life. Peace.